They never knew she was an ace combat pilot until an emergency required her to fly an F-22 Raptor. This story begins at Edwards Air Force Base in California, where Senior Airman Jessica Phoenix Chun was completing her morning routine as an aircraft maintenance technician. At 32 years old, Jessica had spent the last 8 years working on the flight line, servicing the most advanced fighter jets in the U.S. Air Force arsenal. But everyone assumed she was just another skilled mechanic who'd never set foot in a cockpit. Even her closest colleagues had no idea they were working alongside one of the most decorated combat pilots in modern Air Force history. "Chun, we need you to run diagnostics on Raptor 7, called Technical Sergeant Mike Thompson, pointing toward the sleek F-22 that had just returned from a training mission. Pilot reported some unusual readings in the flight control system. Jessica nodded and grabbed her diagnostic equipment, approaching the $150 million stealth fighter with the same methodical precision she applied to every aircraft that came through the maintenance bay. To everyone watching, she looked like a competent technician doing routine work. What they couldn't see was the way Jessica's eyes cataloged every detail of the F-22's configuration, the way she unconsciously evaluated the aircraft's combat readiness, or the muscle memory that made her hands move across the controls with the familiarity of someone who'd flown this exact aircraft in combat zones they'd never heard of. "Chun," Sergeant Thompson continued, "Captain Rodriguez is coming down to observe the diagnostic. Make sure everything's by the book. You know how pilots get about their birds?" Jessica almost smiled at the irony. If only Thompson knew that she'd logged more hours in F-22 Raptors than Captain Rodriguez had logged in total flight time, or that she'd earned call signs in 3 different combat theaters before trading her flight suit for coveralls. Jessica Phoenix Chun wasn't just another maintenance technician who'd enlisted out of high school. She was former Captain Jessica Chun, the first female pilot to earn ace status in F-22 Raptor combat operations, with 7 confirmed kills during classified missions over hostile territory that officially never happened. But 8 years ago, Jessica had been declared dead after a deep cover operation in foreign airspace went wrong. The official records showed that Captain Chun's F-22 had been shot down with no survivors. But the truth was that Jessica had been extracted by Special Operations Forces after completing a mission so classified that her survival had to be buried. Along with the operation's details, the Pentagon had given her a choice: accept a new identity and disappear from military aviation forever, or risk exposing operations that could destabilize international relations. Jessica had chosen to protect the mission, trading her pilot's wings for anonymity and a new life as an enlisted maintenance specialist. For 8 years, she'd worked on the aircraft she'd once commanded. Watching younger pilots climb into cockpits she was no longer allowed to occupy. Captain Maria Rodriguez approached the F-22 with the confident stride of a pilot who'd earned her place in one of the Air Force's most elite squadrons. "Airman Chun, right? I've heard good things about your work. How long have you been working on Raptors?" Jessica looked up from her diagnostic tablet. 8 years, ma'am. "I know these aircraft pretty well." "That's impressive. Did you ever consider flight training?" The question hit Jessica like a physical blow. "I thought about it, ma'am," Jessica replied carefully, "but I'm happy with my current assignment." Captain Rodriguez studied Jessica with the analytical gaze that all good pilots developed. "Chun, you move around this aircraft like you understand it from the inside out. That's not typical for maintenance personnel. You sure you never flew anything before?" Before Jessica could answer, the base-wide emergency alarm began screaming across Edwards Air Force Base. All personnel, the base commander's voice boomed over the emergency broadcast system. "This is not a drill. We have multiple unidentified aircraft approaching restricted airspace. All non-essential personnel report to designated shelter areas immediately. Flight crews to alert stations. I repeat, this is not a drill." The maintenance bay erupted into controlled chaos. Through the hangar's open doors, Jessica could see the organized pandemonium of the flight line as pilots rushed to their aircraft. Then she saw something that made her blood run cold. Only 2 F-22s appeared fully mission-ready. For whatever threat was approaching Edwards, they were dangerously under-equipped. Jessica's eyes were fixed on the operations display mounted on the hangar wall, showing the tactical situation. 6 unknown aircraft, flying in tight formation, had penetrated the air defense identification zone and were tracking directly toward Edwards. They were fast, maintaining speeds that suggested advanced fighters. The base's alert fighters were scrambling, but the math was brutal. Against 6 unknowns, with only a handful of F-22s ready to launch, the base was vulnerable. All available. Combat aircraft are to launch immediately, the announcement system crackled. Jessica watched as Captain Rodriguez reached Raptor 7 and began her pre-flight checks. The other pilot, Captain James Morrison, was already strapping into his aircraft. 2 pilots, 2 aircraft, against what was now confirmed as a hostile force of 6. Then Lieutenant Marcus Webb stumbled and went down hard on the tarmac, his leg at an unnatural angle. They were down to 2 operational F-22s with pilots, facing 6 unknown aircraft. Jessica's hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the overwhelming urge to act. Every instinct she'd developed over years of combat flying was screaming at her. To move, to do something. The tactical display updated. The unknown aircraft had split into 2 groups, executing a classic combat maneuver designed to divide defensive resources. Jessica had defended against this tactic before when she'd been outnumbered 3-1. "Thompson," Jessica heard herself say, "Raptor 9, what's its status?" Thompson looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Chun, what are you talking about?" "Get to the shelter, Raptor 9, Jessica repeated. "I finished the engine diagnostics yesterday." "What's its current status?" "It's not flight ready. Missing the final sign-off, and there's no pilot." "Now move!" Jessica was already moving, not toward the shelter, but toward the equipment locker where the flight suits were stored. "Thompson, I need you to listen very carefully. I am a pilot. I've logged over 2,000 hours in F-22 Raptors, including 800 hours of combat time. My name isn't actually Jessica Phoenix Chun, it's Captain Jessica Chun, Calcine Phoenix, and 8 years ago I was declared killed in action after a classified operation." Thompson stared at her, his mouth opening without sound. "I know how insane this sounds," Jessica continued, "but right now, this base has 2 F-22s ready to launch against 6 hostile aircraft. That's a losing equation. Raptor 9 is flight ready. I can fly that aircraft and I can help stop those hostiles. But I need you to trust me right now." Thompson looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached past her and grabbed a communications headset. "If you're really a pilot, you're going to need ground support. I must be insane, but if those hostiles breach our perimeter, we're all dead anyway. At least this way we go down fighting." Jessica was already running toward Raptor 9. She climbed into the cockpit, and the moment she settled into the ejection seat, 8 years of exile vanished. The cockpit wrapped around her like it had been waiting for her return. This was home. This was where she belonged. "Tower, this is Raptor 9, Jessica transmitted, requesting emergency launch clearance. "Raptor 9, you are not cleared for launch. Return to the hangar immediately." Jessica's hands were already moving through the startup sequence. "Tower, Raptor 9, hostile aircraft are now 10 minutes from base perimeter. You have 2 aircraft launched against 6 hostiles. The math doesn't work. I am mission ready and launching to support defensive operations." She released the brakes and felt the F-22 surge forward. The aircraft rolled onto the taxiway, moving toward the active runway. "Raptor 9, Tower. Security is en route to your position. Shut down immediately." But Jessica advanced the throttles and felt the F-22 leap forward. The aircraft accelerated rapidly and she pulled back on the stick. The Raptor lifted into the sky, and for the first time in 8 years, Jessica Chun was exactly where she was meant to be. "All aircraft, this is Overwatch," the airborne command transmitted. "New aircraft launching from Edwards, identify yourself immediately." Jessica hesitated for just a moment. "Overwatch, this is Phoenix," she transmitted, using her old calcine for the first time in 8 years. "Launching from Edwards to support defensive operations?" There was a pause. Phoenix, this is Overwatch Actual. Confirm your identity immediately. Overwatch Actual, Phoenix. I have no current authorization codes, but I have 6 hostile aircraft. Bearing down on Edwards, 2 friendly fighters against 6 hostiles, and the tactical situation is deteriorating. I can provide authentication through mission knowledge of Operation Cedar Sweep and classified operations I cannot name on this frequency. Phoenix, if you're who I think you are, you're supposed to be dead. I got better, sir, Jessica replied. But we can discuss my resurrection after we deal with the current situation. Request weapons-free authorization. After muffled conversation, Overwatch Actual came back. Phoenix, you are weapons-free? Try not to start World War III, and when this is over, we're going to have a very long conversation about how dead pilots come back to life. Jessica banked her F-22 toward the flanking aircraft. She heard Rodriguez's voice. Phoenix, as in Captain Jessica Chun Phoenix? That's impossible. She's dead. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, Rodriguez. Focus on the primary group. I've got the flankers. At 25 miles, Jessica fired 2 missiles. The flankers reacted, braking hard and deploying countermeasures. Her first missile lost its lock, but the second maintained it. Flanker 2 missile impact. Good kill, Phoenix, Overwatch announced. Jessica was already engaging Flanker 1, executing a vertical displacement roll. At 15 miles, she fired again. The missile struck home. Flanker 1 destroyed. The flanking attack is neutralized. Jessica vectored toward the primary engagement where Rodriguez and Morrison were locked in combat with 4 remaining hostiles. Rodriguez, Morrison, on my mark, brake hard right and dive. Full afterburner. It's going to look like you're running, and the hostiles are going to follow. When they commit to pursuit, I'll be coming from their 6 o'clock high. Phoenix, you're asking us to use ourselves as bait, Rodriguez said. I'm asking you to trust me. Do you trust me, Rodriguez? We train on your missions, Phoenix. We trust you. Jessica climbed rapidly, positioning herself above the engagement. Rodriguez, Morrison, execute the brake now. Both F-22s broke and, Dove, the hostile aircraft pursued. Jessica rolled inverted and pulled through into a diving attack. At 8 miles, she fired twice. Both missiles found their targets. Primary 3 and Primary 4 destroyed. 2 hostiles remaining. The next 2 minutes were a masterclass in coordinated tactics. Primary 2 attempted to escape, but Jessica cut off the angle. Morrison, ease off to his 5 o'clock. Let him think he's getting separation. When Primary 2 leveled off, Jessica fired. The missile struck home. Rodriguez eliminated Primary 1 moments later. All hostiles destroyed, Overwatch announced. Edwards Air Force Base is secure. Friendly casualties 0. That's some of the most impressive flying I've ever witnessed. As Jessica lined up for her approach to Edwards, Rodriguez asked, Why did you do it? You could have stayed hidden. Why? Reveal yourself now, Jessica considered the question. Because 8 years ago, I made a choice to protect the mission by disappearing? But today I saw a situation where my skills could save lives. I couldn't watch people die when I had the ability to prevent it. Sometimes the right choice is the hard choice, the choice that costs you something, but it's still the right choice. Jessica descended through final approach. Below, security vehicles were positioned around the runway. The base commander's voice crackled through the radio. Phoenix, when you land, you will shut down your engines and remain in your cockpit until security. Personnel can take you into custody. Base Commander Phoenix, I copy. But sir, any disciplinary action should be directed at me alone. The runway rushed up to meet her, and Jessica brought the F-22 down in a landing so smooth it barely registered. She had saved lives and defended the base, but she'd also revealed an identity that was supposed to be dead. The combat was over, but the consequences were just beginning.